All right, this is going to be my top 5 baits for the month of May. I live down here in Alabama, obviously, central Alabama. And for me, the fishing is going from the spawn. There's still some spawning. They're going to be transitioning into post-spawn and the shad spawn. And then towards the end of the month, you'll be fishing like Tennessee rivers, stuff like that. Fish can get more offshore. Right whenever they get out deep, they can get really easy to catch. So these are the baits I'd use. I actually had all these tied on last weekend for the Smith Lake tournament. So number one, first and foremost, obviously, there's going to be a wacky rig. You know, I'm not leaving home without this. It just is what it is. The setup I use is, it's 12-pound Sunline SX1 to 8-pound Seagar and VizX. This the new Tatula 300 size Tatula MQ reel. Yeah, Daiwa Tatula, sorry, MQ 300. Great reel, really like it. It's an upgrade from the old one that had the reverse switch, which I didn't like, and I've had break. And it goes to, this is a VMC weedless Neco hook. I only use a weedless one. You can cut them off if you need to a VMC crossover ring, to 5-inch X-Zone lures, true center stick. I really think this is probably the best Senko style bait out there for the money. I do really like it. I'm probably going to use something more bluegill colored, because either if you're fishing for the bluegill spawn at the end of the month, or you're still fishing around beds, or you're fishing specific targets, which I think a lot of May is. It's like fish recuperation time. After a spawn, they're either feeding up on the shad first thing in the morning from the shad spawn, or they're recuperating from having spawn. So a lot of times they're going to be on structure, like on specific targets. So flipping would be a good one too. Don't forget, like if you go into a pocket, and you're going to fish all the stuff in the back of that pocket, and you see one log or one stick up or anything that's isolated in a little pocket, Lord, please don't miss that, because that's usually where the biggest fish is going to sit. I can't even tell you how many times isolated cover in a pocket, whether it's a spawning pocket or a pocket kind of coming out of a creek or towards the mouth of the creek whenever they're moving back out, that's it. But a wacky rig, 5-inch X-Zone true center stick, crossover bands, they're the deal. This is a size 1. I use a very small hook, size 1 VMC weedless Neco hook, 8-pound fluoro to a good rig, whatever spinning reel you like. I think a medium, that's the rod, is a Falcon Expert 7-foot medium. I think medium is just right for a wacky rig. Medium light's too light, and medium heavy too much. You know, I know a lot of people don't like 8-pound line, but you can look at my other videos where I've talked about the wacky rig. Over time, it gets me the right sink rate. I have upgraded to like 10 or 12-pound line if I know I'm just going to be fishing boat docks or like a little bit thicker cover. Sometimes those lines can be good, but I would say 90% of the time I'm using 8-pound line. So wacky rig, always my number one, pretty much all year long. Second, and I picked 5 baits that are going to be good all year. Not all year, but just kind of, I wanted to cover every water column. So if you were going out there with just 5 rods, 5 setups, you could kind of hit everything with it. So number 2 is a Neco rig. Neco, call it whatever you want to. I would use that same VMC hook if you want a second option. This is the Decoy. The brand is called Decoy. It's a weedless hook as well. This is also a size 1, but these hooks, if you put more pressure on it, you will bend out this hook. I've lost fish because of it, so I like the VMC weedless Neco. I have used these, which they're good, but I would prefer to stay with the VMC after testing it more. Although the hookup ratio is good, I'm a little too, I lay into them a little bit too much, and I think I've bent the hook out a little, flexed the hook enough to lose fish. This is the X Zone, and this is literally just coming right off my rod, what I used last weekend. The X Zone MB Fat Finesse Worm, great worm, works really well. It's got a lot of no fillers, and they float so well. They really, really float good. So because they do float so much, you're going to have to, if you use it for a shaky head or for a Neco rig, you're going to have to use a little bit heavier weight. And this is also the X Zone Pagoda weights, the tungsten Pagoda weights that go right into it. I leave a little bit sticking out so it hits the bottom and I can feel kind of what's on the bottom. Also with crossover band, so you can use the same band and the same hook and really the same setup on the wacky if you want to use both. But the line is also 8-pound line to a 12-pound Sunline SX1 braid. The reel is a 300 size Daiwa Tattoo, the older one, the LT, which is great. It's lighter than the new one. I just don't like that anti-reverse switch. But if you can find one, that's fine. That's fine. And the rod is a 7'3" medium. This is a Cashin Elite Series rod. Cashin makes great rods. I also like Falcon. Both of them are good. But yeah, so that's also, I'll say this. If you've been fishing a shaky head for years and years, like I used to, try an Neco. Your hookup ratio will go up. It just will. And like, you can swap out this worm, use your band, your pliers from the crossover ring pliers, open it up and put a wacky worm on there and have the same hook, same setup if you only want to carry one. So it's a good way to double up on setups if you just don't have that many rods. Number 3, shad spawn. Okay, so now we're thinking about whenever the fish are up in the grass, this is going to be a little bit heavier cover deal for me. You got to have something that you can go in that grass and you can go in where the fish are and find them. This is the Untamed Tackle Kyle Welcher's Apex jig. It's the deal. This is a shad looking color, obviously, because it's shad spawn. And you can change to a more translucent trailer. This is the X Zone Adrenaline Craw. Works great. You can see a kick and tail, very similar to like the Z Craw. I think it's Z Craw from Zoom. They're very close to each other. It's got nice ribs on it. You can see there. But the Untamed Tackle swim jig, along with that, along with this trailer, you can use a paddle tail trailer. They work well too. I just happen to prefer this one because I'm usually trying to keep it up in the water column. If I were fishing around just submerged grass, that's whenever I'm going to go to a paddle tail. If I'm throwing up into cover, or I want to keep it up in the water column, I'm using bait like this horizontal that's going to keep it righted up a little bit higher. And some people turn this sideways. Dude, the fish don't care. I promise they don't care. But with this jig, it's got the right weed guard. It's got the right hook where it's not a total gaff, but you're not going to bend it out. It's just right. It's made right. You can tell a pro designed this jig for sure. Obviously, it's got a wedge style head where it can go in and out of cover. That's the difference with a swim jig if you've never thrown one. This is 2 50-pound, the Seagar Smackdown braid. Seagar makes great stuff, obviously. It's gray. I really like the color on it. It doesn't fade that much. It's been a really great braid for me with the bigger braids. This is an old Falcon Kara rod. It's the swim jig model, and they do have the swim jig model across their different product lines. I've had a lowrider if you want to spend a little bit less money. I sold that and bought something else and didn't like it and went back and found this old Kara swim jig rod. I probably like the lowrider more. It was the newer lowrider, and this is an older Kara. It's just the cork on it's a little bit thick. Because I'm always doing the shake, the Alabama shake. If you're looking for a good video on that, Randy Howell on YouTube. You just look Alabama Shake, Randy Howell swim jig. You'll find that video, and he explains it better than anybody else I've ever seen. But that's to a Palomar knot, 50-pound braid. Don't use 30. It'll break your heart. This is a Daiwa Tatula 150 reel, 7-speed. And the rod is a 7.2 medium heavy actions. It's called the Swim Jig Special. Just look up Falcon Swim Jig. It's really a parabolic bend, because a swim jig, you want it to be more like a crankbait, where the fish can really get it and inhale it before you set the hook, because a lot of times you'll miss them. That's why a rod with a parabolic bend, more like a crankbait, is important for a swim jig rod. Swim jig rod, you really do need a specific rod just for that technique, because you can lose so many fish without it. And I see a lot of people go to a much heavier rod than what they need. You just don't need it. The only other thing I would say is you do need at least a 7 or 8 speed rod, because sometimes it's really close quarters with a swim jig. So you want to make sure that you have the speed to catch up to them, because that's going to be a problem sometimes. You're not going to be able to catch up to that fish. You know, they'll be moving so fast whenever they hit a swim jig, because your swim jig's moving. They'll be going one direction or the other, or they'll be coming directly at you, and you have to be on your deal. Like, you got to be on it whenever you're fishing a swim jig, or you will miss the biggest fish of the day because you weren't able to catch up to them. So if you're throwing a swim jig, hold on, be prepared. This one here, got them a little bit tied up. There we go. So we've talked about the bottom of the water column with a Neco rig, a wacky rig kind of middle. You know, you're throwing around targets. You've got a swim jig where you're throwing up into cover or around thick grass. So that's a braid technique, something a little bit heavier. Now you're going to need something for the top of the water column on top. I was throwing this weekend, I would say, so usually after the spawn, fish are going to set up around logs, laydowns, things like that, and because they're kind of recuperating from the spawn. Or this may, to me, a lot of it is just fish recuperating, like I said. So I'm looking for something that's going to move slow around heavy cover, and something a little bit smaller profile, because they're not wanting to chase, they're not wanting to eat that bigger thing. At least that's my mind, because the fish are not in the most positive mood in May. So something a little bit more finesse. This is, I think it's a the Berkeley Chopo. You could also throw a plopper, the 75 size. This is the smallest one that they sell. You want either a white, a black, translucent, or maybe even a bluegill color. That would be the 4 colors I think about owning. Whopper Plopper or the Berkeley Chopo, both of them are good. But really, this is also, you could also throw a popper on here. So that's kind of the either or for this technique. Small, moving slow. They both kind of do the same thing. I would probably go to a plopper, chopo, more in moving water, and a popper and more of, you know, like stagnant water, backwater, shallow cover, things like that, where you don't really have any water moving. For my Topwater rod, I have 2 different reels that I put on here. So this is my light reel setup. I have 15-pound mono, and I know you could throw a really light braid too. That's fine as well. This is what I have on here. For my heavier topwaters, I'll use the same rod, but I have a different reel spooled up with 50-pound braid, or 30-pound braid, I'm sorry. Seagar Smackdown 30-pound braid. That works really well. So this rod can do both. Sometimes I'll carry that second reel in my crate, and I'll swap it out if I need to go to a bigger topwater, like a bigger walker, chugger, something like that. And this is the Shower Blows rod it's the Evergreen International Combat Stick. This is the old one. I really like the old ones. I didn't hear many people talk about them because they have double-footed guides, so they're really durable. Great rod. Like, man, I hate that they changed new ones because the new ones don't have double-footed guides, which I really like on, because I'm pretty hard on my gear being in the kayak with that Hobie and you have the horizontal rod tubes. Sometimes putting your eyes in and out, I'm really bad. I won't use the covers once I get on the water. I know maybe that'd be a better way to go. But if you can find an old evergreen combat stick, really great rods. Also a 7-speed reel. Most all my reels are 7-speed except for cranking. And they're interchangeable. I like that too. Not necessarily with this one because I have mono, but it's a Daiwa Tatula 100, 7-to-1 gear ratio, and this is 7.2 medium heavy. It's called the Shower Blows and Moving Versatile Rod. So it's also very parabolic because you want a parabolic bend rod for treble hook baits. So yeah, really great rod. The only bad thing about these rods is you have to use a aftermarket hook keeper because I don't know, Japanese hadn't figured out how to put hook keepers on everything that they make, which is ignorant. Yeah, Topwater. So you've got Neco for bottom, wacky rig for cover, swim jig for heavy cover, and skipping around boat docks, kind of getting it in that nasty stuff, and then you have to have a Topwater, obviously. Last but not least, for me, is a spinnerbait. You can also go with a chatterbait. I know that's probably the more popular version for kayak anglers. I really don't throw a chatterbait. You know, I'm probably the only kayak fisherman that doesn't. But the other bait that you could also use would be a jerkbait. Jerkbait's good all the time, obviously. That's probably been my go-to this year and last year is a jerkbait. So if you want to, if there was an honorable mention, it would definitely be a jerkbait. So this is a 7'3" jig and worm casting rod, also evergreen combat stick. The old one is a Quantum Tour S3. Great reels if you can find a used one. Before their reels started going downhill, this is the best reel that Quantum ever made. Has a big power handle, also a 7-speed reel. This is 17. For a spinnerbait, I like either 15 or 17 pound line. Both of them work well. Both of them kind of have their, you know, which one's better in certain situations. But if I had to choose one, it'd probably be 17. This is just a War Eagle. I'll set it down here. But you do want a little bit heavier rod. There's a lot of different good rod choices for a spinnerbait. This is the one that I use. I've used a lot of different spinnerbaits. War Eagle's probably my favorite. Accent. There's a lot of good ones. I like hammered blades. I think it breaks it up a little bit, the reflectedness a little bit more. That's an X-Zone Stealth Invader. The color of the spinnerbait is mouse. And these are willow. Now, this time of year, unless the water is really muddy, you're getting into the time of the year where you want the fish are moving a little bit faster because it's a little bit warmer out. So going to willow leaf spinnerbaits is probably the way to go. So it can be moving a little bit faster, especially for clear water. You want it to be moving a little bit quicker. There's a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait. It's good all around. 3/8, half, and 3/4 probably the three sizes. I mean, they're the only sizes I have. I think I have a couple of 1 ounces for night and just single blade for really dirty water or at night, early in the morning. Yeah, just translucent color, whites, shag colors. I think I have a 309 colored and Stealth Invader on there, along with the mouse color. They just kind of go together. I think it's more of a bluegill shad imitator. Who knows? I don't think the fish care. It's just got a little bit of color to it. Yeah, more like a jig rod, something that's a little bit heavier because you're usually going to be throwing it around cover. And a good 1/2 ounce spinnerbait, 17 pound line. Yeah, there you go. If you have any questions, put them below. Shout out to X-Zone Lures and Dugout Bait and Tackle. You can get most of these baits, if not all of them, from Dugout Bait and Tackle in Marietta, Georgia. They also have a website where you can order them right on there. But give them a call, they can ship right to your house. X-Zone Lures, I know Dugout doesn't sell those, but I'm just in love with their baits. There's a lot of great ones on the market that you could throw in place of these, but X-Zone really been good for me. If you have any questions, put them below, and good luck out there this month.